pregnant woman on the brink of death, a private jet slicing through the clouds, and the only person who can save her is a quiet 17-year-old boy from a forgotten neighborhood. No medical degree, no title, just instinct, courage, and a heart that refuses to look away. But who is this boy? Why is he on the same flight as a billionaire and his wife? And when the world finally sees what he's capable of, why does he turn down millions? Could you stay calm as a life slipped through your hands at 30,000 feet? Would you be strong enough to walk away from fame, to ask for something far bigger than money? This story isn't just about one act of bravery. It's about who we choose to see and who we so often ignore. It's about what happens when compassion breaks through class, and what changes when someone finally listens. So get ready, because what happens on this plane will stay in your heart long after the seatbelt signs turn off. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and let's begin the journey. The hum of the engines filled the cabin like a whisper that never slept. Outside the windows, clouds melted into each other in a soft ocean of white. Indifferent to the lives carried inside this metal vessel, lives about to change forever. Flight Millionaire 614, en route from Newark to Oslo, was halfway across the Atlantic when the first sign of trouble appeared. At first, it was subtle, a sharp inhale, a flicker of panic in the eyes of a woman seated in 1A, just behind the cockpit. She clutched her belly. "Graham," she whispered, her voice trembling. Her husband didn't hear at first. He was reviewing a business proposal on his tablet, earbuds in, head slightly tilted. The crisp navy suit he wore hadn't wrinkled a bit, not even after 8 hours in the air. She gasped again, louder this time. Now. Heads turned. Graham yanked out his earbuds. "Claire." Her hand was pressed to her stomach. Her breathing became shallow. I don't feel right," she whispered. "Something's wrong. It hurts." The nearest flight attendant, a woman in her late 20s, stepped forward, concern etching across her brow. "Ma'am, are you okay? How far along are you?" 30 weeks. Claire groaned, her forehead beating with sweat. "It's tightening. I can't breathe." "Is there a doctor on board?" the attendant asked aloud, already moving for the intercom. Graham stood, alarm finally breaking through the shell of control he always wore. "I need a doctor," he snapped. "Now." The intercom buzzed through the cabin. "If there is any medical professional on board, please make yourself known to the crew immediately. We have a medical emergency." In the economy cabin, nearly 20 rows back, a boy looked up. He had been quiet for most of the flight, sandwiched between a sleeping businessman and the window. 17 years old. Hoodie zipped up to his chin. A black spiral notebook rested on his tray table, filled with hand-drawn diagrams of human anatomy, nervous doodles, study notes, hopes. His name was Malik Carter, and this was supposed to be the most important trip of his life. The woman's cries pierced the wall of curtains separating first class from the rest of the plane. Another announcement. "Is there a nurse, EMT, or anyone with medical experience?" Silence. Malik's hand twitched. His eyes scanned the ceiling, his breath catching in his throat. "Not now. Don't draw attention. Don't be that kid again." But then he heard something that silenced every doubt. A sob. A sound he remembered all too well, the same helpless cry his grandmother had made when his mother collapsed in their kitchen 2 years ago. Back then, no one came. No doctor. No sirens. Just Malik and a phone that took too long to connect. He stood up. The businessman beside him stirred. "Everything okay?" Malik didn't answer. He reached for his backpack, fished out a small pouch of glucose gel he always carried for his grandmother's insulin crashes, and made his way up the aisle. The curtain at the front of the plane parted, but a flight attendant stepped in his path. "Sir, please remain in your seat." "I think I know what's happening," Malik said calmly. "She's in distress. Could be a placental abruption or a pulmonary embolism. If she's short of breath and clutching her side, it's possibly a clot." The attendant blinked. "You're a student. Pre-med. I've done emergency volunteer work in Newbridge." He raised the pouch. "This might help, depending on her vitals." A voice behind the attendant barked, "Let him through." Graham Westmore's face was tight with panic. Claire was half conscious now, moaning, her dress soaked with sweat. "I don't care if he's a janitor," Graham snapped. "My wife needs help." Malik knelt beside her. "Ma'am, my name is Malik." "I'm going to check your pulse." Okay, Claire's eyes fluttered, unfocused. As he counted beats per minute with one hand and touched her belly gently with the other, his mind went into overdrive, replaying everything he'd studied, everything he'd watched happen to his own mother. This wasn't just theory. This was real. And this time, he was not going to be too late. The first time Malik Carter saw an ambulance, it wasn't racing down a street with sirens blaring. It was stalled engine dead, stuck outside their housing complex in Newbridge, New Jersey, while his mother lay unconscious on the living room floor. He had been 15. The paramedics arrived 10 minutes late. The hospital was 15 miles away. His mother didn't survive the night. That day rewired something in him, not with loud vows of vengeance, but with quiet fury, the kind that builds slowly, like steam under a sealed lid. Malik didn't talk much at school after that. He spent more time at the library, more time with Grandma Evelyn, his mother's mother, a woman with soft eyes and a steel spine, who raised him the best way she knew how, with warm oatmeal, scripture readings, and the same 4 words, every single morning. Don't let them define you. But life had other ideas. By junior year, he had started spending weekends volunteering at a small community clinic run by a retired nurse and 2 part-time interns who taught him how to take blood pressure, check vitals, and recognize symptoms most people ignored. He didn't have a white coat, he didn't have credentials, but he had something else: instinct, focus, and a reason that kept him moving forward even when everything around him told him not to bother. When North Atlantic Scholars announced a pre-med observational program in Norway, Malik applied 3 times, got denied twice. On the 3rd, he included a letter handwritten about his mom, about Newbridge, and about the silence that swallows people like her when they can't afford to scream. He got in. It wasn't a full ride, but enough to make the dream possible. Grandma Evelyn used her savings to buy him the flight. "You go," she said. "You go change somebody's story, just like you wish someone had changed hers." So he packed light, a hoodie, 2 shirts, his journal, and a pouch of glucose gel for Grandma, which he brought with him just in case she forgot to pack hers. And now, there he was, 35,000 feet in the air, kneeling in Lumen Air Flight 614 beside a billionaire's unconscious wife. Her name was Claire Westmore. He didn't know it yet, didn't know who she was or who her husband was, didn't care. What he cared about was the sweat forming along her temple, the erratic pulse, the shallow breathing. He looked up. "Get me a compress. Something cold. And if you have oxygen on board, I need it now." The flight attendant rushed off. Graham Westmore hovered, one hand wringing the other. You sure you know what you're doing? Kid Malik didn't answer right away. He felt for abdominal tenderness. Left side. Sharp response. He nodded slightly to himself. This might be a pulmonary embolism. If it is, and we don't act, she and the baby could both. He didn't finish the sentence. Claire groaned softly. Malik leaned closer. Ma'am, try to stay with me. You're going to be okay. He glanced at Graham. Does she have any history of clotting issues? Or has she been sitting a lot? This pregnancy. Graham blinked. I don't know. She's been on bed rest the last 2 weeks. Doctor's orders. Malik's voice remained steady. That could be it. The oxygen tank arrived. Malik secured the mask gently over Claire's face. She stirred, gasping for air, the lines of pain slightly easing. For a moment, no one moved. The tension in the cabin was thick. Passengers peeked between the curtains. Flight attendants whispered into radios. Then, the intercom buzzed again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Due to a medical emergency, we are making an unscheduled landing in Reykjavik, Iceland. Please remain seated and calm. Malik sat back on his heels. His heart thudded. His palms were damp. And suddenly, all the strength that had carried him forward, it shook. Not from fear, from weight. What if he had been wrong? What if he had touched this woman, tried to help, and made it worse? What if his place wasn't here in first class, in medicine? In any of this, he stared out the window. The clouds had thinned. Below, the dark stretch of ocean looked like a sleeping beast. He wanted to cry, but he didn't, because his grandmother had told him once you can break after. Right now, you do what needs doing. So he sat there, quiet, focused, until the wheels touched ground. And for the first time since his mother died, he felt something that looked a lot like hope. The wheels screeched against the runway. Metal trembled. Passengers jolted forward in their seats. And for a long, aching moment, the cabin held its breath. Then came the flurry. Medics rushed aboard the plane with a stretcher. Voices overlapped. Orders snapped. Oxygen tanks swapped. IV line inserted. Claire Westmore was carefully lifted from her seat, her husband trailing behind with eyes wide and voice useless. Malik Carter stood to the side, still in the hoodie he hadn't taken off since New Jersey. He was invisible again. Not ignored, just quietly stepped around, like a folding chair in the way. As the last paramedic passed, Graham finally looked at him. A beat. Then you coming. It was more command than question. Malik nodded, unsure whether he had a choice. They moved quickly down the stairs and into the waiting ambulance. Claire was pale, her lips slightly blue, but her chest rose and fell rhythmically now, and Malik clung to that like a thread holding two worlds together. Inside the Reykjavik University Hospital, white light pressed against white walls. The ER was sterile, silent, efficient, unlike anything Malik had seen back home. He stood just beyond the glass partition, watching doctors surround Claire, monitoring vitals, scanning, prepping. His hands were still. Beside him, Graham paced. She was fine, he muttered. She was fine just 2 days ago. We shouldn't have flown. He didn't say it to anyone in particular. But then he turned, slowly, toward Malik. Why did you come up? What made you think you could help? The question hung in the air, not hostile, but curious, like he'd never met someone who did something just because it felt right. Malik shifted his weight. I've seen it before, he said simply. With my mom. It felt the same. Graham blinked. What happened? She died. I was 15. There was no one else there but me. Graham said nothing. No reply, no platitudes, just silence, the kind that meant something had been heard. A nurse opened the door. She's stable. They want to monitor her for the next 12 hours, but her vitals have normalized, and the baby's heart rate is good. Relief cracked through Graham's face like sunlight after storm. He exhaled deeply, then rubbed his eyes with both hands. Thank God. The nurse turned to Malik. Dr. Larson says you recognize the symptoms almost immediately. That helped? Thank you. Malik nodded but said nothing. His inside still buzzed with adrenaline. The crash of it all came slowly, a delayed emotional collapse. Another nurse handed him a bottle of water. You should sit, she said gently. You look like you haven't blinked in an hour. He found a bench in the hallway and lowered himself onto it. The hard plastic bit into his back. And that's when the doubt started whispering again. What if she had died? What if he'd gotten it wrong? What if being close enough wasn't enough? He opened his notebook, the one he carried with diagrams and sketches and study notes, and flipped to a blank page. He didn't draw anything. He just stared. That's when Graham sat beside him. You still in high school? Just graduated. Scholarship kid Malik nodded once. Graham ran a hand down his face. Well, whoever taught you did good. You held your nerve. Malik glanced over, the tension still tight in his jaw. I didn't hold anything. I was terrified. Exactly, Graham said. That's what holding your nerve means. There was a pause between them. Quiet, but not empty. And then Graham asked something that surprised them both. What's your dream? Kid Malik looked at him, really looked as if weighing whether it was worth saying aloud. To become a trauma surgeon, he said at last. But not in a shiny hospital like this. Back home, Newbridge, somewhere people stop dying just because they can't afford to live. Graham leaned back. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. For the first time, Malik saw the man beneath the suit, and Graham saw the boy beneath the hoodie. The return to the plane felt colder somehow. Though nothing had changed physically, the carpet still gray, the windows still oval, the hum of the engines still low. Malik Carter felt something had shifted. Claire Westmore was safe in an Icelandic hospital. Graham had stayed behind, promising to take a private flight once she stabilized. Malik, however, had no such luxury. He had a scholarship meeting in Oslo. The school had arranged his flight. And now he was back on Millionaire 614 Seat 21C Economy, back where he belonged. Except, as he stepped past the curtain separating first from the rest, he caught it, a stare, hard, cold, familiar in its quiet hatred. Seat 4A. The man sitting there was older, maybe 60. Salt and pepper hair, trimmed beard, a tailored navy blazer, and eyes that followed Malik with suspicion, like a guard dog sizing up a threat. Their gazes locked only for a second, but the message was clear. You don't belong here. You never did. Malik said nothing. He kept walking. The moment he took his seat in the cramped economy row, he opened his notebook again, not to study, not to write, but just to breathe. His hand trembled slightly. Across the aisle, a flight attendant whispered to another. Their eyes darted toward first class, then toward him. He closed the book. 10 minutes later, the man from seat 4A appeared. Malik looked up, startled. The man didn't smile, didn't introduce himself, just stared down at Malik with the disapproval of a lifetime. You were in first earlier, he said quietly, helping that woman. Malik straightened his back. Yes, sir. The man leaned closer. You a doctor? No, sir. Just trained in some emergency medical response. Then you had no business being up there. The words weren't shouted. They were sharper for their calm. You people always think you're heroes, the man continued. But one mistake, and she could have died. There are rules for a reason. Malik's heart pounded in his chest. I was trying to save her, he said, voice measured. The man snorted. Trying doesn't mean you're qualified. You want to be helpful. Get your degree. Put in the work. Don't play doctor on rich people. And then, just like that, he turned and walked back to 4A. Malik sat frozen, not because of the insult, but because a part of him, the deepest, most wounded part, wondered if the man was right. What if he had gotten lucky? What if all this praise, all this noise, was just pity disguised as gratitude? He looked down at his notebook. The words on the last page blurred as tears welled up in his eyes. But then something shifted again. A memory, his grandmother's voice from a kitchen in Newbridge. There's always going to be someone who tells you to sit down. You just make sure you don't listen when you're supposed to stand. He closed his eyes, took a long breath. Then he did something he hadn't done in weeks. He started writing, not notes, not anatomy facts, but a letter to himself. Dear Malik, you didn't freeze. You didn't panic. You acted when no one else did. You didn't save a millionaire's wife. You saved a person, a mother. That matters. Even if no one claps, even if someone sneers, you did what you came here to do. Keep going. No. An hour passed. Then, a quiet voice came from the seat beside him. Excuse me, are you the boy who helped that lady Malik turned? A little girl, maybe 9 years old, tight braids, curious eyes. Her mother gave a warm smile from the window seat. I told her how brave you were. Malik smiled back. Small but real. The girl leaned in and whispered, I want to be a doctor too. His chest softened. Then you'll be a great one, he said. The air inside the cabin had settled. The hum of cruising altitude, the quiet rustle of snack wrappers, and the soft glow of reading lights cast a sleepy calm. Malik Carter sat in 21C, one leg bouncing. Not from nerves anymore, but from energy with nowhere to go. His notebook was closed on his lap. The letter to himself remained tucked inside, like armor no one else could see. A flight attendant, Lena, he'd seen on her name tag, stopped beside him. Mr. Carter. He blinked. Yes, Captain Thorne would like a word with you. Up front, several heads turned. He could feel the eyes, the curiosity, the questions brimming beneath polite silence. Malik rose, trying to ignore the tremor in his stomach. As he passed row after row, he caught a glimpse of 4A. The man stared again, unmoving, cold. But this time, Malik didn't look away. He walked right past him. At the cockpit door, Captain Morrell Thorne stood tall, dark-skinned, in his 50s, his voice calm and resonant, even in greeting. You must be the young man who saved our passenger, the captain said, extending his hand. Name's Thorne, captain of this bird. Malik shook it, unsure what to say. Then came the voice on the intercom. It was Thorne's, but this time, for everyone to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I wanted to take a moment before we begin our descent to acknowledge something extraordinary that happened earlier today. A pause, a shift in the air, thanks to the quick thinking and courage of one of our youngest passengers. Mrs. Claire Westmore and her unborn child are alive and well. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't in uniform. But when it mattered, he stepped forward. His name is Malik Carter. He is 18 years old from Newbridge, New Jersey. He acted with bravery, compassion, and clarity far beyond his years. On behalf of Millionaire, we thank you. The cabin broke into applause, but Malik froze. He'd imagined moments like this quietly, foolishly in his room at night, a dream buried under years of rejection letters and overdue bills. But now that it was happening, he didn't know what to do with it. From the front of first class to the back of economy, passengers turned, craned, clapped. Some smiled wide. Others clapped slowly, thoughtfully. Even the little girl from earlier gave him a 2 thumbs up across the aisle. But Malik didn't bask in it, because somewhere around row 3, the man from seat 4A stood and walked briskly toward the rear galley, disappearing behind the curtain. And in that moment, Malik realized something. Not everyone would clap. Not everyone would like what he'd done. Not because it was wrong, but because he was the one who did it. And still, he stood there and let the applause finish. Not for ego, but for Evelyn Carter, who never got her moment. For the people back in Newbridge who deserved to be seen. For the quiet kids on scholarships who felt invisible when they weren't saving someone. When the noise faded, the captain leaned in and spoke, just for Malik to hear. That man in 4. Yeah, name's Douglas Vane, board member for Millionaire, rich, powerful, and allergic to humility. He paused. Don't let people like that shrink you, son. They see storms and calm seas when the boat's not theirs. Malik nodded slowly. I won't. Back in his seat, Malik noticed something waiting on his tray table. A small note card, folded, tucked beneath a napkin. He opened it. Thank you for showing my daughter what real courage looks like. Row 17, Seat A. He folded it carefully, placed it in the same pocket as his letter, and for the first time since takeoff, he allowed himself to smile. The applause faded, the seatbelt light blinked on, and the quiet hum of the cabin returned like a tide rolling back to shore. But for Malik Carter, nothing felt quiet inside. He sat still in his economy seat, eyes forward, heart full and unsettled. Not because of the praise, but because, as he watched the flight attendants resume their duties and the passengers go back to watching their tiny screens, he could feel it, a different kind of tension, like the air had changed again, like someone was coming. And it was. Just before descent, Douglas Vane returned from the rear galley. He didn't go to his seat. Instead, he walked slowly into economy. People watched, whispered. Some froze mid-sip. Others pulled their kids closer. He stopped in front of Malik. You like attention, don't you? The voice was quiet but sharp, a scalpel dressed as civility. Malik blinked. Excuse me. This little show, the captain, the clapping, the headlines you're hoping for. Vane gave a short, clipped smile. It won't last. Malik didn't answer. He could feel every row around them listening now. Vane leaned closer, voice low. People like you come and go. A flash, a moment. Then the world moves on. You'll be back in your little town, forgotten, while people like me. He tapped his chest. We'll still be flying first. Malik stared up at him, the silence thick. Then finally, quietly, you came back here, just to say that Vane didn't flinch. I came back to remind you that this world doesn't change because of one good deed. Malik nodded once, then smiled, not mocking, not bitter, just calm. Maybe not, but it's a start, a pause. And if it bothers you that much, maybe you're the one afraid of change. That struck somewhere Vane couldn't hide. His mouth tightened before he could speak again. A voice rose from the side. "You should sit down, sir." It was Lena, the flight attendant. Her voice was firmer now. "This isn't appropriate." Vane turned, slowly. "I'm a board member of this airline, and I'm responsible for passenger safety," she said. "Please return to your seat." For a second, he didn't move. Then he chuckled, dry and humorless, and walked off without another word. The cabin stayed quiet for a long moment. Then someone clapped. Then another. Soon, a ripple. But Malik didn't stand this time. He didn't need to. He just closed his eyes for a second and breathed. Later, as the plane began its descent over the lights of Oslo, Malik leaned his head against the window. He thought of his grandmother again, of long nights spent reading by flickering bulbs, of buses missed, doors shut, smiles faked, pride swallowed, and now this. Not because someone handed him a chance, but because, when no one else moved, he did. Still, a question nagged him. Why was Douglas Vane so shaken? Why did a simple act of kindness make a powerful man feel so threatened? And that was when it hit Malik. Sometimes, the strongest resistance to change comes from those who have the most to lose when the world becomes fair. Oh. As the wheels touched down and the plane taxied toward the gate, Malik straightened his back and folded the letter in his pocket again. Not out of habit, out of intention. Because whatever came next, the scholarship meeting, the media, maybe, the hate, the hope, he was ready. The doors opened with a hiss. The rush of cold air from the jet bridge hit Malik Carter like a whisper of something new, something he didn't yet understand. Passengers streamed out, dragging bags and conversations. Claire Westmore was wheeled out first, conscious but resting. Her husband, Graham, never left her side. He didn't say a word to Malik on the way out. Malik stood back, waiting for the crowd to thin. He didn't expect what came next. Mr. Carter. The voice was polished, clipped. An assistant, slim in a sleek black coat, stood beside a woman with sharp gray eyes and an even sharper tone. "I'm Annalisa Rowe, Director of European Operations for the Westmore Foundation." Malik blinked. "I'm sorry you'll come with me," she said, not asked. "Mr. Westmore would like a word, privately." "Oh." They led him to a quiet lounge near customs. Glass walls, soft lights, a security officer outside. It felt like a room designed to make you feel small. Graham Westmore waited by the window, phone in one hand, a neat espresso in the other. He turned when Malik entered. "I owe you." Malik stayed near the door. "You don't?" "Yes, I do," Graham replied, his voice low and tired. "You saved Claire. You saved my daughter." That word again. Daughter. Malik's throat tightened, but he stayed composed. "I did what needed to be done." Graham nodded slowly. Then came the part Malik didn't expect. "I want to sponsor your education, ma'am, anywhere you want to go. Tuition, housing, travel, you name it." Malik's heart thudded. His jaw stiffened. Why, he asked. "Because it's the right thing to do." Graham said. "No." Malik said, calm but firm. "Why now? After ignoring me on the plane, after watching me perform CPR on your wife and not even saying her name to me." Graham flinched. "Just slightly. I wasn't in the right state of mind." "You were in the exact state of mind people like me deal with every day." Malik interrupted. "Dismissed. Invisible. You looked at me and assumed I didn't belong." A long silence passed. Then Malik stepped closer. "If you want to do something real, don't just change my life. Change the system that made you think mine mattered less." Graham studied him. For the first time, no arrogance, no polish, just silence. "And if you can't do that," Malik added, "voice lower now. Then keep your money." Annalise shifted uncomfortably, but Graham didn't move. "You'd walk away from an Ivy League education?" he asked. Malik smiled just barely. "I haven't walked away. I've walked toward something my whole life. And this is just another mile." He turned and left the lounge without waiting for a response. Behind him, Graham Westmore stood frozen, espresso untouched, the weight of something unfamiliar pressing in. Guilt? Respect? Maybe both. Outside in arrivals, Malik sat down beside his battered duffel bag and pulled out his phone. No press, no crowd, just a single message from Evelyn Carter, sent hours earlier. "Proud of you. Keep walking tall, baby." He read it again, and for the first time since the plane, he allowed himself to feel it. Not the pride, the anger, the exhaustion, the knowing that even your greatest moment could be reshaped by someone else's power. But he didn't let it harden him. Instead, he pulled out his notebook and began writing again. By the time Malik Carter stepped into the icy Oslo air, the story had already left the airport. He didn't post a thing, didn't tag, didn't tweet, didn't even text beyond his grandmother. But someone else did. A video from a passenger, shaky, vertical, grainy, caught him on his knees beside Claire Westmore, counting chest compressions, a flight attendant crying in the background, and that moment when the entire cabin burst into applause. Main you by morning, it had 1 million views. By noon, it had 10. Headlines screamed, "Black teen saves billionaire's wife" on international flight hero without a passport, who is Malik Carter, from New Jersey to Norway, the boy who saved a life. They got his name right, but they missed everything else. No mention of the struggle, no mention of being doubted, no mention of the man who belittled him in front of 200 passengers. In a hotel lobby across town, Malik sat alone, a borrowed coat, a breakfast he barely touched, and a screen full of stories that didn't feel like his own. He scrolled through an article, a news clip. Each one twisted the same thread. Against all odds, he did it. He saved her, as if his odds had been natural, as if the barriers weren't built, brick by brick, by the same kind of people, now calling him remarkable. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, from the weight of being called exceptional by a world that still wouldn't seat him in first class without a second glance. Then came the email. From Dr. Astrid Nyholm, a head physician at Oslo General Hospital. It was short. "Mr. Carter, Claire Westmore and the baby are stable. She insisted I invite you personally to visit. If you're willing, we'd be honored to welcome you." He stared at the message. 1,000 thoughts spun through him. Part of him wanted to go, to see she was okay, to feel the circle close. Another part resisted. He wasn't a prop for closure. He wasn't a redemption tool for the wealthy. He was a boy who acted, who sacrificed, who deserved more than a moment in the spotlight before being sent quietly back home. He closed the laptop and stepped outside. Oslo was cold, but beautiful. He looked up at the gray sky, breath fogging gently. Then he whispered aloud, "What story do I want them to tell?" That night, Malik did something unexpected. He answered the email, but not to confirm a hospital visit. Instead, he sent this: "I'd be happy to meet, but only if you'll also allow a film crew from my community school to document it. We don't just need stories of saving lives. We need stories of systems that failed us before we got the chance to save them." No reply came immediately, but Malik didn't wait by the inbox. He was already writing his next message. This one to the North Atlantic Scholars Program. And this time, he didn't just apply. He sent a cover letter, one that didn't hide where he came from, or who he helped, or why he chose not to take a billionaire's offer. He closed with a single line: "I don't want a seat at your table just because I saved someone powerful. I want it because I can build a better table for the next generation." It was just after dawn in Oslo. The city had not yet come to life, but Malik Carter was already awake, seated at the window of his modest hotel room. Steam curled from the mug between his hands, black tea, the only thing the machine in the lobby could make without tasting like chemicals. He hadn't expected the knock. 3 gentle taps, then silence. Malik stood slowly, looked through the peephole. It wasn't hotel staff, not media, not even someone dressed in sleek corporate black. It was Claire Westmore. She was bundled in a heavy coat, scarf pulled tight around her neck, eyes tired but kind. Her left hand held a paper bag. Her right rested gently on her belly. When Malik opened the door, she gave him a small, exhausted smile. "Didn't think I'd come alone." "Did you?" she said quietly. He stepped aside wordlessly and motioned her in. The silence sat between them like a careful child. "I didn't tell Graham," she said finally. "He wouldn't understand why I came." Malik didn't press. He simply watched as she set the bag down inside. 2 warm pastries, clearly local, a kind gesture. She looked around the small room, the creased sheets, his battered duffel bag, the broken zipper. Then she looked back at him. "I don't remember much," she said, "but I remember your eyes." Malik stayed quiet. "You were afraid," she continued, but steady. "Everyone else panicked. You didn't." He shrugged. "I didn't have the luxury." Her expression changed, softened, then hardened. "I've lived in a world where fear is optional, where mistakes don't cost you everything. You reminded me that life doesn't give everyone that gift." Et tonton. She sat on the edge of the armchair and folded her hands over her stomach. "They told me what you said to Graham," she said, "about his offer." Malik's face didn't change. "He thought you'd jump at it," she added. "He thought that was generosity, but you were right to turn him down." This time, Malik did speak. "I didn't do it for that. I didn't even do it for you." "I know," she said gently. "You did it because it was the right thing. And you did it while being treated like someone who didn't belong." A moment passed. Then Claire reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a worn notebook. It wasn't Malik's. It was hers. "My birth plan," she explained. "You must have found it in the chaos. I didn't even realize it was missing until last night." Malik took it from her and ran his fingers over the cover. Inside were notes, drawings, breathing charts, letters to the unborn child, and a line in shaky cursive: "Dear Ava, I hope your first breath doesn't happen at 30,000 feet, but if it does, may someone brave be near. Malik looked up. "I don't know if I was brave," he said softly. "Just prepared." Claire smiled faintly. "That's the kind of brave that matters most." Before she left, she placed a small envelope on the table. Not a check, not a contract, just a note. Inside were 5 words: "Let me tell your story," and a card, "Ava Westmore Fund for Community Health." Claire stood. "Let's make it bigger than both of us." Malik didn't answer right away, but as she left, he felt something settle inside him, not peace exactly, but clarity. This wasn't about fame or money or redemption. This was about what he could build from the moment he'd survived. And he wasn't finished building, not yet. The room was quiet, except for the ticking of the old wall clock and the soft hum of the heater. Malik Carter sat in front of the webcam, shoulders square, expression calm but intense. Behind him, a borrowed Oslo library space. Nothing fancy, just honest. He hit record. "I didn't want to talk about this at first," he began, voice steady. "Not because I'm afraid, but because the world tends to take stories like mine and make them neat." A pause. It wasn't neat. He breathed in slowly. "I didn't know if she'd live. I didn't know if anyone would believe me when I said I could help. And I didn't know if the moment I stood up, I'd be treated like a threat." His voice didn't shake, but his hands, resting just off camera, curled slightly. "They asked me afterward what I wanted. A scholarship, a job, money." He let the question sit there, unanswered. "Here's what I want," Malik said, leaning forward. "I want health equity. I want every community, mine included, to have access to trained responders, to clinics, to care, a breath, not dramatic, just real. I want people to stop being surprised that a young black kid from New Jersey can save a life. We've always had the skill. You just never looked." He opened the envelope Claire had left him. Inside wasn't money. It was a blank check for storytelling resources to fund a documentary, outreach, education. He held up a drawing made by a girl back home at his community center. A stick figure in a plane, a cape, a stethoscope. "She called me a hero," Malik said, "but I'm not. A hero would be someone who didn't have to beg to be believed, who could wear a hoodie on a plane and not be questioned, who could sit in first class and not be asked to move." "Im emson, Odi. I'm just a kid," he said, "a kid who knew what to do." He looked directly into the camera. "So here's what I'm asking for. Not just attention, not headlines, not applause. I want change. I want investment. In people. In places like mine. In futures that aren't polished but possible." A long pause, then a soft closing. "Thank you for listening. If you really heard me, don't just share this video. Share the weight." He clicked stop, and the silence afterward. It didn't feel empty. It felt full of momentum. Later that night, the video quietly launched on the North Atlantic Scholars Program's media platform, not as a feature piece, but as a submission, titled "Only What I Asked for Malik Carter," or Newbridge, and Joe. And a few hours after it went live, Graham Westmore saw it, at his private hotel suite, with his phone in one hand and his newborn daughter in the other. He watched every second, and when it ended, he cried. Not because of guilt, not because of shame, but because for the first time, he realized what his wealth had never taught him grace. The car rolled slowly past boarded-up storefronts and cracked sidewalks. Graffiti clung to brick walls like stories no one ever cared to read. Children darted between parked cars. A woman sat on a stoop, braiding her daughter's hair in silence. This was Newbridge, New Jersey, and inside the sleek, tinted SUV sat Graham Westmore, looking out at a world he'd only ever seen from a distance. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Sure you want me to wait out here?" Sir Graham nodded. "Yes, I won't be long." He stepped out, Rolex hidden under his sleeve. Wedding ring off. No entourage. Just him. And Malik's address scrawled in ballpoint on a crumpled page. Evelyn Carter opened the door before he even knocked. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look impressed either. Her eyes swept him head to toe. No judgment, just awareness. "You're late," she said. Graham blinked. "Excuse me." She stepped aside, gesturing him in. "You're late to caring." The apartment was small, clean, but worn. On the walls, family photos, drawings, a framed certificate Malik's acceptance into the North Atlantic Scholars Program. On the kitchen counter, a box of powdered milk. In the air, the smell of lemon polish and something baking. "I wanted to see where he comes from," Graham said, sitting at the kitchen table like he hadn't sat at a Formica table in his life. "You wanted to make yourself feel better," Evelyn corrected gently. She poured tea, sat down across from him. "You know what Malik did on that plane," she said, "but you don't know what he does here." Graham listened. "Every Saturday, he tutors kids whose parents are working 2 jobs. He reads medical journals in the dark when our power gets cut. He patched up a neighbor's wound last month when no one could afford the clinic." She folded her hands. "He saves lives quietly. You just happen to be loud enough to notice." Graham leaned back. "I offered him everything. A full ride. Connections. He said no. He didn't say no to help." Evelyn said. "He said no to being a headline." Graham looked at the floor. "I didn't know how much I'd missed." He admitted. "I didn't even ask his name until Claire told me." Evelyn nodded slowly. And now Graham met her eyes. "I want to know it by heart." They sat in silence for a long time. Then Evelyn handed him a photo. Malik, age 7, grinning with 2 missing teeth, holding a toy stethoscope. "He always wanted to help," she said. Graham studied the photo like it was a document that might one day save his own soul. Oxen. As he left the building, a small boy tugged on his coat. "Hey," the boy said. "You the rich guy," Graham turned. "Surprised?" "I guess I am." The boy looked skeptical. "Malik says rich ain't about what you got. It's about what you give." Graham crouched to the child's eye level. "Then I have a lot of giving to do." That night, back in Manhattan, Graham didn't go to a gala, didn't take a call from a hedge fund partner, didn't sit in his glass office. Instead, he wrote a check, then another, then built a foundation, the Malik Carter Initiative, a program to build health equity clinics, train youth responders, and fund scholarships without press releases. It would start in Newbridge, then grow. Because Graham finally understood, change doesn't happen when the powerful get generous. It happens when they get humble. The email arrived just before sunrise. Subject line: "She's here. Sender Claire Westmore attachment." A single photo. It showed Claire in a hospital bed, beaming despite the exhaustion. Her arms cradled a tiny newborn girl, skin still pink, eyes still sealed shut. Around the baby's neck, a soft fabric bracelet, one word stitched into it by hand: hope. Malik Carter stared at the screen in stunned silence. His grandmother stood behind him in the small kitchen, hands still dusted with flour from making biscuits. "She made it," she said, quietly. "She did," Malik whispered. Then he added, even softer, "and so did I." That same week, he received a package. No note, just a box. Inside, a stethoscope, a white coat, and an acceptance letter from Oslo Medical Academy, hand-signed by the dean. At the bottom was a handwritten P. "Yao, we don't just want your mind. Malik, we need your heart. Dr. Astrid Nieholm." He didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, he folded the letter neatly and placed it next to the photo of the baby. Oh. Meanwhile, across Newbridge, bulldozers arrived. Where an old warehouse once stood, the ground was cleared for the first community clinic funded by the Malik Carter Initiative. A mural was planned, not of Malik saving Claire, but of Malik reading to children, of Evelyn planting a garden, of a neighborhood not surviving, but thriving. Graham Westmore didn't want his name on any of the buildings. He came quietly. He stayed longer. He even brought diapers. At the grand opening of the clinic, Malik spoke to a small crowd. Nothing grand, no podium, just his voice and a breeze. "You know, I used to think the sky was the only place I could dream big enough to escape. But turns out, dreams don't live in altitude. They live in access, in equity, in the little things like someone believing you, even when you don't look like the answer." He paused, hand in his pocket, fingering the worn plastic ID he still carried from that flight. "I didn't save a life that day. I was just one link in the chain. Claire saved herself. So did her baby. All I did was show up." "Ocha." The crowd clapped gently. Some cried. Even Evelyn, who rarely cried at all, blinked away tears behind her sunglasses. That night, Malik walked through Newbridge under the streetlights. Kids now called him Doc Carter, even though he hadn't earned the title yet. He stopped at the corner where old men played chess, where corner stores stayed open late, where everything started. And he whispered to himself, This was never about being seen. He looked up at the stars. It was always about seeing others. Back in Oslo months later, Malik entered his first lecture in a crisp white coat. He sat in the front row, took notes with his left hand, and smiled. Because now, the boy who had once been questioned for offering help was finally being trained to give it with the whole world watching. And the world, it wasn't afraid anymore. Sometimes, heroes don't wear uniforms. Sometimes, they wear hand-me-down hoodies and sit quietly, watching, until the moment they're needed most. Malik Carter didn't ask for attention. He didn't want applause. All he wanted was a better world, not for himself, but for those forgotten by it. And in choosing compassion over credit, he reminded us that dignity doesn't come from wealth, or power, or headlines, but from how we treat each other when no one's watching. This story isn't fiction. It's a mirror. It asks how many Maliks have we overlooked? How many lives have gone unseen simply because they didn't look like what we expected? It challenges us to remember racism and classism aren't always loud. Sometimes they whisper in boarding passes, in who we believe and who we doubt. So if this story moved you, if you believe in a world where every life matters, no matter the zip code, then carry it with you, share it, talk about it, and let's build a future where empathy is louder than fear. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back with more stories that lift the human spirit and stir the soul. Because here, we tell the stories that deserve to be heard.